Shalom to everyone. The Sovereignty Movement has launched a series of Zoom meetings with public opinion makers and shakers and people who will tell us how we can reach victory for Israel against its enemies. And today we have the honor and pleasure to be with Brigadier General retired Amir Avivi, founder and chairman of IDSF, Israel's Defense and Security Forum, also known in Hebrew as Habitronistim. Shalom, Amir.
Hi, Nadia.
Thank you for being with us. First of all, we want to praise you for your amazing work. We're catching you on the way to another interview. You're the whole day doing Hasbara. May you really continue with continued strength and kol hakavod, as we say.
Thank you very much.
Our first question is, our soldiers are already in Gaza. They're attacking. The army is working, and everybody is. The signs all over Israel say, "Beyachad nenatzeach." Together we will be victorious. What is, in your opinion, what does it mean, victory?
So I think that the government set very clear goals for this war, and it is the destruction of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and all terror infrastructure inside Gaza, dismantling all the capabilities inside Gaza, and making sure that they will never, ever be able again to build up these capabilities. Talking about it military-wise, this basically means conquering the whole Gaza Strip and then spending a lot of time dismantling and destroying all the infrastructure, the leaders, the terrorists, the tunnels, the rockets, the headquarters, every single terrorist capability we need to destroy. This will take a long time. It can take many, many months and even more than a year.
People will ask you, and they ask us also, if we want to be in military control of Gaza, as you just discussed, what's going to happen to the population there? The 2 million they're talking about.
Yeah, so one of the challenges we'll have soon is that we are now concentrated on gaining control, conquering the northern part of Gaza. And we evacuated, or we asked the Palestinians to evacuate the northern part and move south. Most of them did, not all of them, but most of them. The challenge will be what happens when we have to conquer the south. Now, there won't be much left in the north because all the infrastructure, all the houses are connected to the tunnels. And when we explode the tunnels, they'll all collapse. So the situation there won't be a situation where people can go back to live in the north, certainly not immediately. And when we maneuver and start conquering the south, there will be a need to find a solution to move the population into the Sinai Peninsula. And this is something that the world needs to understand and needs to pressure Assisi to open the border and let people go out. I mean, at the moment, Egypt is basically locking them inside Gaza in a war zone. It's something that if it would have happened in Turkey with the Syrians or with countries along the border of Ukraine, the whole world would have been alarmed. How can it be that people are not able to leave a war zone to a safety zone? So we need to work this out. And I think that if it's not going to be done in a planned way, eventually the population will storm the Egyptian border and simply cross without coordination. So it's something that needs to be dealt with. I think that, we have seen many years surveys about what really people want in Gaza. And we have to say that in all the surveys they did themselves, most of the population wants to emigrate from this area.
That sounds certainly something that we agree upon, but and probably most of the Israelis in Israel. But the United States, we hear, are pressuring the Israeli government that at the end of the war, that the area will be given over to the Palestinian Authority, that our boys will fight so that the Palestinian Authority will receive Gaza. What do you say about that? And what can we do to prevent that?
I think that, the Palestinian Authority, it's not an option because it's an entity that ideologically is not really that different from Hamas. They believe in the complete annihilation of the state of Israel. They pay billions to terrorists. They are going to pay every single murderer and raper and people that butcher their people are all going to get money from the Palestinian Authority. We need to acknowledge that. They're also inciting in their schools, building a nation of terrorists. And we saw also in Gaza when we handed Gaza to the Palestinian Authority, they took this place from the Stone Age, literally, to rocket shooting and mortars. This was the Palestinian Authority long before Hamas took over. So this, for us, is not an option. And I think that we need to be able to explain it to ourselves. We also need to be able to explain it to the Americans. We're not going to risk any moral society because of ideas that have no connection to reality.
The war is now in the south, but we know that our boys are also in the north. Meanwhile, the north is quiet. But what is your opinion on what should be done and how it's going to, are we going to have a war also on different fronts? And the last question will be, I'll already add the last question, so we'll do it all together. How does the end of the war look into your, according to you, what do you think, how is it going to look at the end? And is there going to be Jewish settlement in Gaza?
So I think that at the moment, Israel's strategy is to be on the defense in the north, in Judea and Samaria, and inside Israel, and on the offense in Gaza. We are also fighting along the border in the north with Hezbollah and a bit in Syria and also from Yemen. But this is, I would call it local clashes. It's not a full-scale war. But I think that in the long term, we'll have no choice but to also deal with the northern threat. I don't see any citizen, Israeli citizen who lives along the Lebanese border willing to go back home when on the other side of the border, there is a force like Radwan, which is like Nukba on steroids, much stronger, bigger, and vicious, as vicious as the Hamas Nazis. So the government eventually will have to deal also with this threat. And this is why I believe that this war is going to be very long. It will take time to reach all the goals the government set in Gaza. And it will also take time to deal with the northern threat. So this war is going to look more like the independence war than the Yom Kippur War or Six-Day War. This is not another operation. This is the war with really biblical dimension. It's something very different.
And how do you see the end of the war? And will there be, according to you, or should there be Jewish settlement and a return of the Jews living there, not only a military return?
So obviously, when you talk about settling, this has different dimensions or ways of looking at it. You know, one, of course, is from a Jewish, religious, ideological point. But I'm going to talk about a different view, which is national security-wise. Basically, we have overall, when we look at our national security needs, theoretically, we have three choices, and we actually tried all of them. So we know what works and what doesn't work. One choice is retreating, separation. You know, them on one side, we on one side, the other side. The problem with this choice is that this choice enables our enemies to build up their capabilities endlessly, as we saw in Gaza, or as we saw in Judea and Samaria when we retreated in Oslo. In both cases, this ended with thousands of Israelis killed. This is not an option. We cannot just retreat and let terror armies being built in Gaza or in Judea and Samaria. The other option is military presence, not settling, but having military. Now, we tried it, and the Americans tried it, and the Russians tried it, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and also in Lebanon. There is two problems with operating only militarily. And one is legitimacy. How long can you keep an army in a place where you have no citizens? It might work at the beginning for a few years, but then questions will be raised. Why are we there? Who are we really protecting? Are we occupiers? And the second reason is that when you don't have citizens driving along the roads, your citizens, when you don't have many towns that are actually holding the area, really creating control, this creates a reality where the army basically concentrates itself in bases, and then they need to open the roads. And for doing that, because the roads are not alive, you have to deal with IEDs, with shooting, and so on. Then you have tanks and APCs and all these forces. We saw it in Iraq. Thousands of Americans were killed on convoys moving from one place to another. We saw that in Lebanon. Why don't we have convoys in Judea and Samaria at all? Why can't we just drive, one person with a car can drive anywhere? It's because the control is not done by the army, it's done by the citizens. It's the citizens controlling the area. And by driving hundreds of thousands of cars every day on all the roads, they keep the roads alive. And this is what makes a difference. So really, from a national security point of view, we must have Jewish towns in areas where we need to stay. And in Gaza, we won't be able to leave Gaza. We'll need to control the Gazan border, the Gazan-Egyptian border forever. And we'll need full freedom of operation in Gaza forever. So if this is the reality, then we need a reality that is much, much closer to what we have in Judea and Samaria, also in Gaza.
Thank you very, very much, Amir, Avivi. It was very interesting, and we will spread your video to everyone.
Thank you very much.
Keep up your great work.